but they're not going to say that because if that word gets out, they'll lose their job.
We asked Shadow Mountain's recently appointed coach, Mark Stanley, what evidence of steroid use he'd found. Might players indirectly have been encouraged to use them? He told us he saw no sign of drugs and he was against them. The school principal took the same view.
That's great, guys. I know we're playing all right. Just play. Now you're playing all right.
Coaches are like anyone else. They want to win. They set their goals to win the championship. But I had never known a coach to either encourage or look the other way when it came to a person who was either injured or doing something that they felt was detrimental to their health. I'm sure there are coaches that do that, but the vast bulk of them do not.
Here comes a slider.
Nevertheless, high schools in this part of Phoenix now test their teams for steroids. Silcox thinks it works, but Detective Norman is dismissive.
I don't believe the new testing of steroids is going to make really any difference to the high school students. There are too many easy ways to beat the test. There's the oil-based, which is going to stay in your system a long time. Then you got the new synthetic types will be out of your system in a day or two. And that's what all the kids are going to, the new kind. Also, there's gimmicks to get around this thing. A person that's clean can go into the restroom ahead of the person that's actually going to be tested. He can leave a urine sample in a Triscan. Then the kid that's being tested goes in, picks up the clean sample, and comes out. There's different ways to beat these tests.
And do you think that's happening now?
Oh, I know that's happening now.
Drink vinegar before the test, cleans out your system. Drink a lot of water, you'll just screw out water. If you have a test in 4 days, you could take a shot of suspension. It's out of your system in 2 days.
So what do your friends think of the test?
Just something to get through, you know, it's just another problem. It's no big deal, but, you know, it's just something they have to look out after, you know.
The problem in the high school now is still there, still a big problem. The students have no problem getting it. They will continue to use it no matter what the risk because they want that glorious feeling, you know, being big and winning the games, being the star athlete.
Thank you very much. I appreciate this invitation to speak with you.
Professor Charles Yasalis from Penn State University is the world's foremost authority on the use of steroids by minors. He devotes hours talking to schools and colleges about steroid abuse. Students at Lycoming in rural Pennsylvania are the latest to hear his message.
So if I could have the lights, please, we'll start.
If you look at the national surveys done in 1989 to 1990, it actually showed that steroid use increased a small amount among male high school seniors. What'll happen this year, I don't know. But even if it dropped down, what I hear anecdotally is that they've switched to other drugs such as GHB or GABA or clenbuterol. So if we've got them to drop anabolic steroids slightly and they take up other drugs, what have we achieved? And my answer is nothing.
It's a big day for the pupils of Roosevelt Elementary School in Bismarck, North Dakota. It's not often that Arnold Schwarzenegger rides into town. He's chairman of the President's Council on Physical Fitness, which brackets TV, junk food and drugs as the greatest evils of the 20th century.
Exercising with the students.
Schwarzenegger, star of films that glorify a pumped-up parody of masculinity, has admitted using steroids in his days as a bodybuilder. Yet he's the crusader chosen by George Bush to preach health awareness to the young.
We have to rely on a permanent fitness program that makes us healthy, strong, and fit for life rather than just for temporary high that you get with drugs.
The emphasis put on physical appearance in this country is one of the reasons for the prevalence of steroid abuse among young people. How far is your image compatible with your appointment as chairman of the President's Council.
As I said before, we are on an anti-drug campaign. We are on an anti-TV campaign. We are anti-junk food campaign. And since I have this power of influence over the children, because of the films, because of my bodybuilding career, I think it's very important that someone like myself uses this power of influence in a good way and goes around the country and uses it in a way where we can have an influence on our children to make our children fit again, healthy again, and stay away from drugs.
But is your image compatible with your appointment?
Excuse me, I'm doing mostly American television right now.
Is your image compatible with your appointment?
Arnold, I want you to meet Susan Weefald. She's the...
It gives an inappropriate message to our children. Mr. Schwarzenegger admitted that he had used steroids before. Certainly part of his financial and movie acting success one would have to attribute to his use of steroids. And that message, and I think many kids realize that, and it just gives an inappropriate signal.
Young America has other heroes too, footballers like Steve Courson. He spent 7 years as a pro with the Pittsburgh Steelers. The use of drugs in American football is well documented. Courson himself admits using steroids. He saw it as part of the job.
The coach might say in passing that, well, you know, if you gain like 25 to 30 pounds, you may have an opportunity to start or have an opportunity to make the team. And in my strong opinion, by saying that, the coach might as well write you a prescription and hand it to you, because I don't think that you gain 20 to 25 pounds of muscle by sitting on your couch and eating Twinkies.
Get out of here!
The players have a dilemma. Life in the pros is tough, but steroids, which help build endurance, bulk and strength, can keep you at the top. Given that, how many take the needle? In 1981, 23 players weighing more than 280 pounds reported to NFL training camps. By 1991, there were 370. Last season, Terry Long tested positive for steroids. It's easy to understand the pressures which may have led him to drugs, according to Courson.
In my opinion, as being an offensive lineman, and to qualify that being in a position on the football field where physical size and strength are more important than anywhere else on the field, for most people, I think your job is at risk if at some time during your career you don't use those drugs.
But a record of steroid use is by no means an obstacle to a career in the National Football League. Craig Vesey is a lineman in his second year with the Steelers. The club signed him knowing that he'd just been caught taking anabolic steroids as a college player. Nor is Vesey's case exceptional. Brian Bosworth was caught taking steroids in his final year at the University of Oklahoma. The Seattle Seahawks subsequently gave him the biggest contract ever offered to a rookie. Randy Barnes, the former world record holder in the shot, was tested positive for steroids and banned for 2 years by the International Amateur Athletics Federation. Nevertheless, he was signed by the San Francisco 49ers. In New York, the National Football League defends its record on the use of drugs.
To those who say that the NFL isn't really serious about dealing with steroid use, I say you are flat, absolutely wrong. We spend considerable time and considerable money in attempting to deal with this problem in a realistic way, and we're prepared to continue that and to accelerate that if need be.
I think they're serious from the standpoint that they want to protect their image. Other than that, I really question how serious they are. For instance, to qualify that statement, amphetamines has been a problem for a long time in the National Football League. You don't take amphetamines during the week, you take amphetamines the day of the game. So the only way to effectively test for amphetamines is to test the day of the game. They haven't done it yet.
You introduce a lot of logistical difficulties if and when you do that. It's not to say that we haven't thought about doing it. It's not to say that we won't do it. But we have not been advised at this point by our medical people that that is a problem of serious enough proportions that we really need to buckle down on it.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Downing Stadium, Randall's Island, for the 1991 USA Track and Field Championships.
In athletics, the use of stimulants like amphetamine has almost certainly been reduced by testing at the event. But many believe athletes and coaches remain several steps ahead of the testers. One way to stay out in front is to juice up on substances like human growth hormone, which occur naturally in the body. They're undetectable. Another favourite is the male hormone testosterone. The scientist can't even agree what constitutes a positive result. Until he resigned in 1989 in frustration at his lack of support within the organisation, Dr. Robert Voy was Chief Medical Officer to the US Olympic Committee.
You're struggling. Hold it.
He'd quickly become aware of the implications of the system's inability to deal with testosterone.
They don't need to use stanozolol or dianabol or nandrolone, the so-called synthetic anabolic steroids. They won't need to use them anymore. They can use their normal male hormone. And consequently, we will have completely lost the battle to create a fair and level playing field on the basis that individuals at least have a normal hormonal balance.
Recently, I spoke to 3 individuals, males, who use testosterone patches. These are patches that they place on their scrotum, and the testosterone's absorbed from those patches through the scrotal skin, and with the idea that they don't get a large initial spike in their blood levels of testosterone, so it's more difficult to catch them with drug tests.
The tempo, not the distance. Just pick up the tempo if you can.
After 2 years out of the sport, former US Olympic coach Pat Connolly has returned to train Leslie Maxey, a young 400 metres hurdler. Connolly had coached Evelyn Ashford to a world 100 metres record, but she quit the sport in despair at the testers' inability to catch the drug cheats.
Good. Keep it. Come on, keep the tempo. Keep the tempo. Keep it.
When the American athletes, women athletes, started using the drugs, and we could see them change, we could hear their voices deepen, we could see the beards appear on their faces and their muscle definition completely change. We could see them going from mediocre, weak athletes to these incredibly powerful, gifted, super athletes. And I'm talking about women. It was just absolutely devastating. And for Evelyn's record, which was phenomenal, which took her a long time to reach this point, and here some people were able to come by and just run incredibly fast instantly. Not that there aren't more gifted athletes than Evelyn, but it was just this overnight success that was impossible. It became so incredibly disappointing. By 1988, I lost hope.
The final of the Olympic 100 meters. It lets them go first time, and Ben Johnson got a brilliant start. It's Johnson away and clear, and Lewis is not going to catch him. Johnson wins it. Lewis second, Christie third.
1988 did see the unmasking of one cheat. Traces of stanozolol were found in Ben Johnson's urine and led to his disqualification after the 100 metres at the Seoul Olympics. Johnson's exposure proved that the International Olympic Committee was above reproach on the drugs issue, according to its president.
First to applaud.
To fight against drugs with words is very easy. We in the IOC, we are fighting against drugs with facts. Suspending the best, most popular athlete in 1988 in Seoul. That is to fight against drugs. I repeat, to fight with words is very easy.
No, we can't today. We can't because we have to go back. We have a meeting at 7 o'clock.
Johnson served a 2-year ban and is now running again. Officialdom insisted he was the exception. In fact, he was exceptional only in being caught.
Don't wash it. Do you think there's now less drug taking in athletics as a result of the example that's been made of you? You know, it's very hard to tell. You know, I don't want to say this and say that right now, so I just want to leave it just as that. What's your guess? No guess. No guess.
The Dubbing Commission, set up by the Canadian government in the wake of the scandal, had no doubt that drug taking was rife. Johnson and his coach, Charlie Francis, were probably only caught because of a miscalculation.
Do you ever remember a discussion back in 1981 with Charlie Francis about something called clearance times? That is, you had to stop taking the drugs and be free of them or clear of them for a certain number of days before you competed.
Yes, sir.
And that was something that was discussed with him.
Yes.
So, and I'm just going to show you...
The Commission discovered that Johnson had passed 19 in-competition drug tests in the 2 years before Seoul. To the inquiry's chief counsel, Robert Armstrong, the detection of Johnson, rather than being a victory for the testers, drew attention to the fallibilities of the system.
In-competition testing, quite frankly, is largely a waste of time and waste of money because the athletes know that they'll be tested at competition. They know how to cycle the drugs that they're taking, particularly anabolic steroids, and they know when to go off them and when to go back on them. And so in-competition testing doesn't really act as an effective deterrent at all.
Sports authorities know that testing at competition alone will not catch steroid takers. Steroids are training drugs. No one suggests that Leroy Burrell takes steroids, but this routine test at the US Championships wouldn't catch him if he did. Administrators have maintained that they're catching the cheats. For 20 years, they've been peddling a myth.
It's official.
It certainly became clear at the Dublin inquiry from evidence from officials from the IOC that they knew of the fallacy, yet they perpetuated it. If one is cynical, one certainly comes to the conclusion that the IOC and the IAAF simply wanted to leave the impression that they had the problem of drug abuse under control, when in fact they didn't, of course.
Well, the authorities are in the business of making money. They're promoting a sport, they're promoting the Olympic Games, they're promoting amateur competition, or whether it's football or basketball, whatever, they want to sell tickets, they want to sell television time, they want to sell commercial sponsorship. And they can't do that if there's this image that athletes are not clean, the ideal people that the world would like to perceive them. So they want world records, and they will do anything to make sure their world records appear to be untainted.
There is another way, and they practice it in Sweden. Bent Eriksson works for the Swedish Anti-Doping Federation. It's Eriksson's job to turn up at sports training centres in Stockholm and administer tests unannounced. Since steroids are used as training drugs, the only way to catch users is to test them when they're training. Eriksson and his colleague take several minutes to decide whom to test. First up this time is Benny Nielsen, a young boxer. Few federations share Sweden's enthusiasm for this sort of testing. For years in America, any athlete who lived more than 75 miles from a testing center was exempt from giving a sample. With the Americans still accused of dragging their feet, the IAAF, the International Amateur Athletics Federation, worries about the general lack of progress in out-of-competition testing.
This is the absolute necessity for sport to go into if they want to use the control program as a deterrent. And now finally, during the last 2 or 3 years, some countries have understood the message. But they are too few, and we have a big world which have no programs whatsoever.
Double Olympic gold medalist Sebastian Coe has now retired from competition, but he remains the sole representative of the world's athletes on the medical commission of the International Olympic Committee, the IOC.
You've got to have out-of-season, random testing. The governing bodies know it, the international federations know it, but it's not really a system that is working, that is being adopted in a lot of countries. And in fact, if you look at America, for instance, they've done everything they possibly can to wriggle out of this problem.
Over the past 20 years, the Swedish experience has shown what a determined authority can do. But both the IOC and the IAAF have failed to compel other countries to adopt these measures, seeming to favour the path of least resistance. There's certainly resistance growing in America to the early introduction of blood testing. The invasion of privacy argument is being wheeled out again. All of this dismays Robert Armstrong.
Well, I say what I've said before, that I think the Americans protest too loudly, and they hide behind their legal system and hide behind their lawyers.
Lawyers have played a key role in the affairs of the Athletics Congress, TAC, the body which controls American athletics. Apparently guilty athletes have escaped through legal loopholes. At the US Championships in 1987, discus thrower John Powell tested positive for nandrolone. A ban would have robbed America of a potential medalist in the Rome World Championships 2 months later. But a minor testing error sorted that one out.
There was no question but what the urine that was collected was his urine. But in the labeling and the marking of the bottle, a letter was left out of the code. Yet the system used was a fail-safe system, that even if the lettering was not correct, at least the container was proofed to the point where the individual's urine was the individual's urine. Yet because of that shadow of doubt on a technicality, he was excused.
Powell went on to win silver in Rome and in the process raised questions about the IAAF's own testing. As a medalist, Powell would automatically have been tested. Nandrolone stays in the body long enough for it still to have shown up. Yet in Rome, the only recorded positive was a woman.
Either there was no testing, or for some reason John Powell had gotten the drug out of his system and tested negative. Or there was testing, and he may have been found positive in Rome, and nothing was done about it. I don't know.
How isolated are episodes like that?
I don't think they're very isolated.
Legal niceties have often ridden to the rescue. American long jumper Larry Myrick's tested positive for a banned stimulant 3 times in 6 weeks in 1990. Technicalities and his claim that he was only taking a flu remedy saw his ban lifted. He was back on the track in time to take bronze in the Tokyo World Championships.
My reaction is that if this is a novice athlete, the first time he's ever been tested, and he's a 12-year-old, I would probably excuse him on the basis of inadvertent use if I believed his story. But a veteran athlete who has been tested many times over the past years knows full well the educational efforts that have been made to explain that cough and cold medicines contain stimulants. But yet it's still considered the best excuse in the game to be using a stimulant is to excuse yourself on the basis, oh, I forgot. I had a bad cough and I used some cough medicine.
American 400 meters world record holder Butch Reynolds competed alongside Myrick's at the US Championships in 1991. He did so despite having been suspended for 2 years by the IAAF after testing positive for steroids at a meeting in Monte Carlo. Yet more alleged technicalities led to the temporary lifting of Reynolds' suspension by an arbitration panel, an additional appeal procedure which the Americans allow their athletes. Dr. Lundqvist of the IAAF was far from pleased.
I was very upset because he was, as you say, suspended under the IAAF rules and should not be permitted to participate. And it's unfair to have a person who is suspended for suspected doping to let him compete. It's against our rules.
The Reynolds case has dragged on for months. The IAAF upheld the 2-year ban, but was fought all the way by the American authority, the TAC. It backed Reynolds' claim that the procedures on his test were not properly followed. His lawyers are still doing everything possible to get him off in time to run in Barcelona.
The problem isn't testing so much. It's do we actually, can we actually deal with the positive test? Can a sport deal with its bad apples? Even if the sport has the #1 athlete in the world, can it really gamble that that athlete may be cheating?
This is the man who's been the guiding force in TAC, the Athletics Congress, for 10 years.
Together, the Executive Director of the Athletics Congress of the USA, Mr. Olen Casal.
Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure on behalf of the officers, the Executive Committee, and the Board of Directors of the Athletic Congress to welcome you here today.
We didn't get quite such a warm welcome when we visited TAC headquarters in Indianapolis to ask Mr. Casal about his sport. When we got onto the subject of drugs, he became angry and curtailed the interview.
Got film in there, I'll take it out.
We're just letting.
Pardon?
We're just putting in a new one.
Okay, take it out. I don't want it in right now.
This was as far as we got. Annoyed by our line of questioning, Mr. Casal threatened us, then snatched and later destroyed the main interview tapes. But he didn't know we had a sound cassette as well.
I don't think that you're being fair on this drug issue because you don't know what you're talking about on the drug issue. If you're going to continue that way, then I want the film out of that. I want the film out of that machine, and I'm not letting you take it any place. You understand that? Because I'm not letting you out of this building if you're going to keep on just taking one side of an issue.
To the great athletes from 140 nations who are competing in these Olympic Games, welcome to our country.
The opening ceremony of the Los Angeles Olympic Games in 1984, Hollywood style. There was a huge amount at stake.
From the citizens of California.
The Rocket Band.
The United States had boycotted the Moscow Games 4 years earlier in protest at the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. The Soviets, in turn, had refused to come to California. With the icy wind of the Cold War blowing through sport, the Americans were desperate to show that capitalists throw better parties than communists. They also had to make a profit. A repeat of the losses of the Montreal Games might have destroyed the Olympics forever. And they certainly couldn't afford a drug scandal. Initially, the organisers wanted no drug testing at all. Hardly surprising, since the US Olympic Committee was keeping quiet about the 86 positives found amongst its athletes in the run-up to the Games. Nothing spoils a party like a drugs bust. In the end, there was testing at the Los Angeles Games, but allegations of malpractice have emerged. Dr. Craig Camera was Associate Director of the official testing laboratory. He recalls positives go